When disaster strikes, the last thing you want to think about is what's for dinner. With one bag and one pot, you can serve your family one amazing meal that will make all the difference. No fridge, no freezer, and no stress. Shelf stable, never tasted so good. Today, we're building an emergency meal kit worth stockpiling. Hey guys, it's Jara with Wicked Prepared. Welcome to the channel. Today, I've got another shelf-stable meal in a bag, aka emergency meal kit. These simple bags contain every single thing you need to make a complete meal, and it's a real meal that's hearty and comforting when it matters most. If you talk to people who have been through a real disaster, been without power for more than a day or two, dealing with the aftermath and cleanup of a hurricane, a flood, an ice storm, things like that, for example, they will undoubtedly tell you how much it meant to have a good warm meal. But these meals are good for more than just emergency use. Pull them into action when your dinner plans go awry and you need a backup. When unexpected bills or income loss, cut into your grocery budget. Bring them to a family who's had an illness, a surgery, or a new baby and could just use an easy meal on their time frame. Take them camping, donate them to a free pantry or a church food bank. You get the picture. Having a shelf full of these meals can save the day time and time again. The meal I'm making today is a chili verde with pork. It's zippy and yummy and not very spicy, so it can appeal to everyone. Let's get started and I'll show you how you can make this emergency meal kit for your pantry. So here are all the ingredients we need. So I've got a large can of Keystone pork. If you had home canned pork chunks or pulled pork or something, you could certainly use that. I've got some canned beans here. I've got pinto beans and kidney beans. It's not going to matter if you use light or dark kidney beans. I've got a can of chili with beans and a can of stewed tomatoes. And then here I've got a jar of salsa verde, green salsa. This is a 16-ounce bottle, I believe. You need about 1.5 cups to 2 cups, so it can be slightly smaller than this if that's all you can find. But this will work well, this size. And of course, any brand that you prefer or can find, I got this one on clearance at some point, so this is what I'm using. And I've got a can of diced green chilies here. Of course, these are mild chilies. This is the larger 7-ounce can. You could use 2 of the smaller 4-ounce cans, whatever you want to use. And I've got my seasonings here. So what I did here is I took this little 1/4 pint mason jar and I added 2 teaspoons of cumin, 2 teaspoons of freeze-dried minced garlic, 1 tablespoon of freeze-dried cilantro, and then I filled the rest of the jar up with freeze-dried minced onion, diced onion. So that's got, the whole jar holds 1/2 cup, so there's a little bit less than 1/2 cup of the onion. And that is all we need for this meal. So I'm going to go ahead and get this into the bag. Now these are the bags I use, but you could use any kind of bags or containers for this. This is just what I usually use, but I've done it in all different sorts of containers before. I have larger ones and smaller ones. This meal will fit in the small one, but there's a little more wiggle room in the big bag, so I'm going to use the big bag. You're going to want to label them. I usually put one of my chalkboard labels on the narrow side of the bag, and then I have some adhesive CD pockets that I will put on the broad side. And I can actually slip a recipe right into that and have the name of it on there. So no matter which side of the bag I'm looking at, I can see what's in it. These bags are nice and sturdy, so I am able to reuse them over and over again. I like that they have this gusseted bottom with a nice paperboard insert, so they stand really nicely on a shelf. I'll put a link to where I get these on Amazon down below in the description, but like I said, you can use any kind of bag that you want. People have done these in large zip top bags, done them in Dollar Tree gift bags, all sorts of things. All right, I'm going to start by adding my pork. Next, I'm going to add my beans, my pinto beans, and my kidney beans. I'm going to add my chili with beans and my stewed tomatoes. I'm going to add my salsa verde, my diced green chilies, and my jar of seasonings. Now I'm going to show you how to turn this bag into a delicious hearty meal. I'm going to be cooking this meal on my butane stove. This is my #1 go-to. When the power's out for cooking, this is always my first choice. Remember, when you are cooking in a power outage, make sure you always have your safety gear nearby, like a fire extinguisher and a carbon monoxide detector with the digital readout, just in case. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Now, this is really a very simple meal. This is going to be basically just dump and heat, which is perfect for emergencies because you're definitely going to be out of sorts and stressed, and you're not going to want to have to think a lot. And that is the beauty of these bags, is that you don't have to think, you don't have to plan, you don't have to find a recipe, you don't have to gather ingredients. But you have it all right there. You just look at your bags, pick out a bag, cook it, simple, easy, stress-free. but you get a really good meal at the end of it. So I'm going to start with my pork. That's one thing I do want to mention is make sure that you always include a can opener, a manual can opener. Make sure you have one in your emergency cooking gear. Make sure you always have one in your kitchen. And if you want to, you could tuck a little military can opener into each bag. I have sometimes done that, just depending if you want to be extra sure that you're going to have a way to open those cans. Now, one thing I want to point out with the Keystone meats is that these are just, it's just the pork and sea salt are the only ingredients. So this is just like as if you had canned it at home. There is some fat and some broth in here. I'm going to include this all in here because it's going to give us extra flavor and we don't want anything to go to waste. If there's a lot of fat and you don't want it all in your dish that you're cooking, you can remove that pretty easily. It scrapes right off. I'm just going to break this up into slightly smaller pieces. I do want some decent chunks in here, and I know this will continue to break up as it gets cooked and stirred, and I can continue to break it up as it's heating. Next, I'm going to add my beans. Typically, when I'm doing emergency meals like this, I don't drain anything or rinse anything because we don't want to use any extra water, and we also don't want to waste liquid that is packed in our cans because that's usually pretty good liquid. I am going to drain these because I don't really want all that beanie liquid in there, but I'm not going to rinse them because we don't want to be wasting any extra water. That's one thing to note is that this meal doesn't call for any water, but if the meal calls for water or if there's water required to cook part of the meal like pasta or rice, I always include that in the bag in small water bottles. All right, so there's the kidney beans. Next, I'll do the pinto beans. And everything else is going in without draining. So the chili with beans. And now the stewed tomatoes. Our salsa verde. The green chilies. And finally, our little jar of seasonings. And now it's really just a matter of heating this and blending the flavors together and letting it simmer together a little bit. And it will be ready and delicious. So let me get the heat on this. Start blending this all together. Like I mentioned, there are some things you might want to break up as you stir, like the big pieces of stewed tomato. I sometimes like to break those up against the side of the pot, and also the pork. These are some massive, massive stewed tomatoes. Now, I adapted this a little bit, but the original recipe came from an old Taste of Home magazine. Who else remembers those magazines? I loved them so much, the original old school ones from like the 90s. This was actually from their Quick Cooking, but it was all by the same company, and there was an article they would do every month where they would, the idea was you would cook one thing, and then you would use the leftovers from that to make several other meals. And so this was meant to use leftover roast pork that was diced up. But I noticed that most of the other ingredients were shelf stable, or I could find shelf stable replacements for them. So I realized that this would make a pretty good meal in a bag using the Keystone canned pork. Now this isn't really a traditional pork chili verde, of course. It's kind of like a mashup between a traditional pork chili verde and like a regular traditional chili. So it's kind of a hybrid dish. It's definitely not meant to be a, traditional, authentic dish, I guess is the word I'm looking for, but it is really tasty and it's really satisfying and filling and will make a great meal. Now that I've got everything kind of mixed up and broken up enough for my liking, I'm going to go ahead and put a lid on this. I can see that it's starting to simmer around the edges, and the lid is going to help keep the heat in so we don't waste our fuel. So I'll turn it down and let it simmer, and this really could just simmer for 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, just to heat and blend the flavors, and it will be ready anytime. And of course, if you have a wood stove or something like that, or a fire outside that you have something going, you could just let it simmer kind of low and slow for longer than that. Entirely up to you. Okay, so this has been simmering just for 10 minutes. And it is definitely ready to be eaten. You can still see we've still got some really nice big chunks of pork in here, which I like. I broke it up some, but I left some big chunks. Smells so good. I am going to turn the burner off and let it cool just a tiny bit before I serve it up. This looks amazing. It smells amazing. Look at that. Now let's talk about serve-alongs. I like to have this with some sour cream. Sometimes I like to have this with some tortillas. You could have it with cornbread, muffins, things like that. So let's talk about some ways that you can include that in a shelf-stable meal. So for sour cream, you could throw in some sour cream powder and a little bit of water so that you could add to it. I sometimes like to put some lime juice powder with my sour cream powder, depending on how tangy it is, because I like a lot of tang. Another option is you can use media crema with a little bit of vinegar to make some sour cream, and that's a couple of shelf-stable items you can have on hand. I've also used the guacamole dip from the Dollar Tree as sort of a sour cream kind of stand-in in a dish like this. For tortillas, you could throw in some Just Add Water tortilla mix, which I have gotten at Walmart, and you could also add a Just Add Water cornbread mix if you wanted. If you don't have a way to bake that when the power's out, you can just pour it into a skillet and fry it kind of like pancakes and have it like that. So that's some different ways that you could serve different things alongside this chili if you wanted to. All right, I'm ready to give it a try. This is really good. This pork is so good. This recipe originally was designed to use up leftover roast pork, so cubes of pork. It's so much better with this canned pork that's shredded and tender. And this whole dish came together really, really well. This is delicious. I hope you and your family love this meal as much as mine does. I always recommend making a meal once, testing it out, and making sure your family likes it because everyone's tastes are different. If your family votes it a winner, make up several bags to have on hand whenever you need a meal. On this channel, we have a whole playlist with many more recipes just like this. Be sure to check it out. I'm going to leave it linked down below. And I'll also have sources down there for any ingredients that you have a hard time finding, as well as any coupon codes we have for our viewers. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me a green heart emoji down in the comments, and I'll put that meal playlist I told you about right up here for you to watch next. I'm Jera with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.